Hello, I'm Lisa Rao, and I've had the privilege and fun of working for this company for more than 20 years, and the honor of working with Jack and Pete Herschend, the co-founders of this great company and the men who built the foundation for Herschend Family Entertainment. They are living examples of servant leadership, Christian principles, and entrepreneurial spirit. We hope that by sharing their stories, you'll be able to gain some insight and some perspective into the heart of this company. We're here with Mr. Peter Herschend and Mr. Jack Herschend, and we're going to have a little fun in this segment.
Awesome.
Let's talk about when you guys were kids. Did you guys get along?
I did.
We really did, because we were so different, and our interests were primarily different, other than we were both Eagle Scouts. But he went to be his extroverted self, and one story I love on Pete is that he was asked by his father when he was in the first grade if he had a girlfriend, and he said, "Oh yes." He said, "I have 13." And Hugo said, "And how many girls are in your class?" 13. So he went his extroverted way, and I'm an introvert.
We had an alley out in back of our house, and the neighborhood game was kick the can.
Great game.
Everybody who has ever been a teenager or a sub-teenager and had an alley has played kick the can. And it somehow always worked out that Jack was the one who got to the can first and was able to get it, and I could be goalie and he would get in, but I think he actually had convinced me that he was better. He was my older brother, and obviously knew more than I did. But Jack makes a really good point, and I guarantee you it pertains to our relationship through 60 plus years of being in business, that because we are so different, we're stepbrothers, and that's not a secret. We have, my mom and dad different than his mom and dad, but our lives were put together, and because we are so genetically different and in characteristics, we are a product, after all, of who our parents were. And that difference is what has made this combination, from a management standpoint, from an ownership standpoint, from a dream standpoint, it's what's made it possible for it to work.
And as we capsulize it, we say master of operations and master of marketing. Have there also been common interests?
Well, I think common interest in our faith would be one. Common passion for building this business in that would be honoring to Christ. We are very much the same. We're evenly yoked in things like that.
It is not to say that we would always agree on everything operationally or marketing wise. I was in operations, that is to say, I worked inside the park when I wasn't outside the park, trying to get enough people to come inside the park. But those differences, very few policy disagreements. At the end of the day, and the rule we worked out between ourselves was, if it was operations, I would have an opinion. Jack, I absolutely think we've got to open at 8 o'clock, and he wanted 9 o'clock because it would be lower operating cost, or whatever the case may be. But it was an operating decision. We could disagree, but he prevailed. If it was a marketing decision on where we spend our budgeted money, he might very, very well say we ought to be stronger in Springfield and less strong in Wichita. If I had my reasons for feeling the other way around, I won. And that was the rule we had between us. We did have one other rule, we ought to share that too, about when we had a fundamental disagreement, and it was at a board level. That would be policy level. We didn't take the 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock decision ever to the board. You just wouldn't. But we had a rule, and this only happened 3 times that I can remember. You may remember more.
You're right.
Where we would go to the board, and I had to present Jack's position to the board. They didn't know what who was doing what to whom. I had to present Jack's position, and he had to present mine.
I never was as good at that as Pete was, so I won.
No, he won, if my memory serves, he won twice. That is to say, the board voted his position. I talked the board into his position.
You've always been good at marketing.
and I won once. I don't even remember for sure what the issues are now. I just remember the process. But that came from a deep, deep abiding trust of my brother.
And it served us well. Family businesses are tough. You not only have the business issues, but you also have the family dynamics. And being able to take those tough decisions to a board of directors who we trusted was really a good process that worked for us. And again, the family business dynamic so often doesn't work, Lisa, and that's why the vast majority of family businesses, when the godfathers retire, sell to a conglomerate. And we've seen it in Six Flags, and we've seen it in other parks, Paramount parks, that sell to a conglomerate, and then everybody loses. The employees lose, the communities in which they operate lose, the leadership loses, and so it's been a joy to work out our giftedness and celebrate those, and we're passionate about seeing HFE continue to be a family-held business where everybody gains.
Let's reminisce a little. What is something about your brothers, each of you, your younger days, that people don't know?
I'd love to go first because mine's better than his. When Pete was 8, he wanted to make some money for Christmas, and he ran across an ad in the back of a comic book where you could buy a salve and sell it door to door for 25 cents a can, and he was excited. He has always been a marketer. So finally the case of the salve came, and Pete opened a can in front of the family, and initially we got the honest response from Pete. He was ready to say P.U. when he smelled it. He got halfway through that and he realized he had to sell this. So then P.U. became hum, so it was P-um. and so the family has laughed over the P.um. story on my brother. Always been a marketer.
I can remember what it smelled like, and it smelled like a railroad tie. It smelled like creosote. And may have been, I don't know. You know, and I probably paid 10 or 12 cents a can and was going to sell it for 25 cents, doubling my money, and that was pretty good profit.
And the outcome?
Oh, I sold it all. But the neighbors were suckers for
an 8-year-old.
Yeah, you know.
How about a Jack story that we don't know about?
Some of the wisdom of our dad, Hugo Herschend. Jack had thought it wasn't really necessary for him to go to college, that we were going to build the Marble Cave. We were building Marble Cave and going to build it up, and it was going to be All right, and Hugo said, fine, good, Jack, this fall and this winter, I want you to work at Marble Cave, and that'll be fine, and your job will be to carry cement sacks, 96-pound sacks of cement, down to the bottom of the Gulf of Doom. That's probably 425 feet down. One semester of doing that convinced Jack that he ought to have a college education.
It just seemed that Hugo was brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, what was the biggest lesson your parents taught you both?
I think we learned different things because Hugo and Mary were also very, very different. Hugo's gift to us, I believe, was vision. He was truly a visionary. And when you're around Pete, that comes through, and you see it in Pete. Well, Hugo was exactly that. So square dances and underground radio broadcasts, and he just never ended with free publicity when we had no money to market. And I think Mary's was work. She was a German lady who understood that God was important, but work was more important. And so she taught us a great lesson in the value of work.
Hugo and Mary gave to Jack and Pete, and Jack has made this a cause in his life, and that is the love of what God put here in trees, wildlife. Jack is responsible for how many trees you've gotten in the ground now?
Quite a few.
You know, we have a tendency when we talk about the years to go back in history. But you think of the young employees who have joined HFE, and we look at the vision. I mean, we love what has made this company, but look what it's become.
One of the things that I think exemplifies the vision of Pete is the fact that he brought us Christmas, which now is a huge part of our year here at Dollywood and at Stone Mountain and Silver Dollar City. He also brought us the Children's Festival, something that very few people know. But he went to Canada, saw a similar type of thing. So he has been the visionary that really changed our business because we were very attraction oriented. People every year would say, what's new for this year? What's new for this year? And so we were very attractions oriented until Pete's vision of saying, we need to be in the special events business. That was a big, big vision. There's another story that's behind that. Pete, you tell it well. John Baltus was the general manager at the time that Christmas came to be. And Pete and I had told him that he could spend $50,000 without our permission. So he spent 49,000 some dollars on lights and made it happen. The point of my story is that I think a very big part of our success has been trust, whether it's trust between Pete and Jack, trust of a board, or trust of a general manager. And I wonder what would have happened had John not been gutsy enough to go out and spend $49,000 on Christmas lights. So he was trusted, he felt trusted and empowered, and so he did it.
Did you ever see 20 plus properties in a dozen plus states?
No. No.
Nobody did. No, any more than Hugo and Mary when they leased Marble Cave in 1950 ever even began to envision Silver Dollar City as not as it was in the first year, I don't mean that, but as a world-class attraction. That just wasn't in the cards. When we started Silver Dollar City, that wasn't in the cards. There was no thought. Remember, it was Silver Dollar City was done to bring people to Marble Cave. It wasn't done to be an attraction in its own right. It evolved into an attraction in its own right because, and Jack used a really important word just a moment ago, and that is the word trust. It evolved into what it is because the men and women who were Silver Dollar City then were so good at what they did.
And we've been blessed from the very beginning with very, very capable people who were just independent enough that if you gave them a little trust, they really delivered because that was their passion. And I think Joel and his team have done that same thing throughout the properties that you described. I think one of the secret ingredients of our success has been to trust and empower.
Are you surprised?
I guess not. I didn't, like Pete said, I didn't anticipate it. But when Joel came on board 10 years ago now, we could tell that he was the right leader. And so to say we were surprised, he had such capacity, and the people he brought on board had such capacity that, no, it didn't really surprise me.
Okay, some fun. Best thing about your brother?
I think the faith of my brother is a tremendous gift that he brings. He has the ability to share his faith in a way that is not preachy, and I love that. All of us have been around folks who share their faith in a way that turns people off. It's like adding seasoning to a meal. You get a little bit and it's great. You get a little more than a little bit and the whole meal is spoiled. Pete is his gift, I think, that I don't know people really appreciate is his awesome commitment to Jesus and his ability to walk the walk, talk the walk, walk the talk. I'll get it finally right. Is a tremendous example of Christian ethics worked out in the real world.
It's funny as I listen to our conversation how parallel the perspectives are. Jack gives me credit more than I think I've earned or deserve in terms of a walk. Here is a guy who, along with Sherry, for 20, how many years Sunday school?
30-some.
30-some, round figures, 30, has led a Sunday school class at the church, the two of them, for 30 years. That's 30 times 52 weeks a year. And I guarantee you, I know the rate of pay. That's faith in action. The other characteristic that I think you would find widely acknowledged about Jack by his peer group, his ability as a leader, and he does it as well or better than anybody I've professionally run across, is to lead by asking questions. You ask the people around him, and Jack will sit in a meeting and kind of quietly, and then he raises his hand, and the room goes silent. It's always a thoughtful question of where are you going with this? What is the objective? How will you know that you've gotten where you said you're going when you get there? And how do you know that this was the right objective? Have you thought about? It's not go do alternative A or B or C. It's have you thought about?
Did that ability to ask the right question in a respectful way, did that evolve
Yes.
through the years? What taught you that?
I remember being very driven, and early on I have the answers and I want you to get behind the answers. And probably because it didn't work real well, it caused me to change my style.
I think we were both influenced by both positive and negative management style examples. And no names here, but there was one man not inside the company. He was outside the company, and his management style was ego-driven. Now, he got things done. I wouldn't disparage, and as I say, the name isn't important because it's the principle. He got things done, but you had a lecture invariably about how really good he was. And then we had a guy on our first board named George Schelling. He was on our first board of directors. And he led by example. This isn't the place for George Schelling stories, and I do use his name on purpose because it ought to be up in lights in our corporate book of memories.
What about your brother gets under your skin?
Nothing now. When I say now, I mean we have a different working relationship for the past 15 years since we stepped out of operations. So we're both working in completely different things. And you know what? Because I saw the same list of questions. I went back and I couldn't think of it. There were disagreements, but that's not under my skin. That's 8 o'clock versus 9 o'clock.
That doesn't mean we didn't have to work at the relationship. And I take such pride in the leadership team within HFE. And I see evidence often of how folks strive to work effectively together. And it's one of the parts of the culture that make HFE successful.
And it is absolutely about learning servant leadership.
It is. And Joel gave us the patience, kindness, humility, respectfulness. I think before Joel, we practiced it. And we knew 1 Corinthians 13. What Joel did was commit it to paper and go out and personally teach it. And it has become, I think, the single biggest. There have been a lot of people contribute to the culture over 60 years. That's the single biggest piece of the culture, and it's all been within the last 7 or 8 years.
Joel in this company knows more people by their first name than Jack and Pete know.
What will forever make you laugh about your brother?
That's a great question. I think the image of Pete and Jody, his wife, playing in the Hatfields and McCoys, and Pete was a Hatfield and Jody was a McCoy, and they weren't supposed to like each other or talk to each other, and to watch the two of them holding hands in their funny costumes and with a huge crowd around it is just, I laugh every time I think about how that turned into a great marriage and 5 kids in the future.
Jack, to my knowledge, to my memory, did not date in high school. Then he came down here to this hole in the ground called Marvel Cave. And again, long story short, he met his wife-to-be, he met Sherry. And smitten might be a good word to use. He head over heels, he lost it. I was with Bert Llewellyn in Marvel Cave, and we were on top of the tower. And Jack and Sherry were just returning from doing some cave exploring, as we calling it down. I think they'd gone down to the lakes area. And they were down on the platform at the bottom of the cave, bottom of the cathedral room. And Bert and I, they didn't know Bert and I were standing up there on top of the tower. And of course the acoustics in that room are very, very good. And they were supposed to be cleaning up with a little pitcher of water, but Jack managed to sneak a kiss in on Sherry. Bert and I were up there, and we turned the lights on at that time. Jack figured out right away what was going on, and his comment was, "Pour that water, Sherry."
Totally respectful that you both, we believe you believe family first, but from a business principle perspective, what would you like to most be remembered for?
Mine is a pride in the HFE family. I love to go out and catch people doing things right. There's so much of it. So I'm really proud of the HFE family.
We had talked about the business of creating memories, and that HFE family, of the men and women, I'm talking about the guys in the parking lot, and I'm talking about the street characters, and I'm talking about the waiters and busboys and candyman, the list goes on, all of them. And I'm talking about the captains on the Ducks, and I'm talking about the management team at Elitch Gardens, everywhere. That same group of men, that same group of women, are the ones who create the memories that make this company possible. Because unless those memories are created, and they do it, we won't have a repeat business, and therefore we won't have a business. But they are the ones, so yes, pride in who they are and pride in what they continue to do. It, not one time, day in, day out. It can be 100 degrees in the shade, or it can be raining and cold in the middle of a festival. And day in and day out, that same group of men and women have created, continue to create memories that will be worth repeating for generations to come.
We hope you enjoyed hearing the stories from Jack and Pete Herschend and the Herschend family. We hope you were able to gain some insight and some perspective into how this company became the great organization it is today. Thank you very much, and join us again soon.